Today, we want to answer the question, what is a testimony? In its most simple terms, a testimony is simply retelling a factual account of something that you have witnessed. And that's really all that our testimony is when it comes to being a Christian, is retelling the factual account of how Jesus Christ has impacted our lives. In this video, I want to help us understand how to identify what our testimony is, what the power of a testimony is, and what the importance of us telling our testimony to the world is. I want to start off and just quickly go through a couple of accounts in the Bible of what a testimony is and how powerful it is and how these people went about telling it. In Mark chapter 5, there's this demon-possessed man, and they would try and chain him up, and they would try and imprison him, and he would break the chains, and nothing could stop him. And one day Jesus shows up, and he casts the demons out of this man. And this is the famous account of when he cast legion out of the man and into all of the swine. And it says that after this was done, that he sat there, and he was sober, and he was in his right mind, and he was totally under control again, where he hadn't been his entire life. And everybody in the region was freaked out. Like, how could this possibly be? There's nothing that we could do to change this man. He was a bad man, and he was totally out of control, and there was nothing that we could ever do to stop him. And it says this, we'll pick it up in Mark chapter 5, verse 18. And when Jesus got into the boat, this is the demoniac, the man who had been demon-possessed, begged Jesus that he might be able to go with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but he said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you." And so the demoniac man, he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So here is, in its most raw form and basic form, a testimony being given. I want you to notice a couple of things here. We have a man who was totally overcome, totally out of control, and nobody wanted to be around him. He was a hazard to everyone. Jesus entered into his life. So we have before Jesus, and then Jesus entered into his life and changed absolutely everything. And when that happened, he became a man who was clothed and in his right mind. He could be reasoned with. He was able to be in society. And then this man, he wanted to go with Jesus, but Jesus had an important mission for him. He said, "No, I don't want you to go with me. What I want you to do is I want you to go and tell everyone, tell the people what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you." And so his marching orders were to tell his testimony, to tell the great things that Jesus had done in his life. And when the man did, so we have before Jesus, and then the great things that Jesus did, and then when he went and told all the people in the region of Decapolis, he proclaimed it. It means he spoke it out loud. He preached it, actually. He told everybody everything that Jesus did. It says that everyone, all people, marveled. Now, this is what a testimony does. Is we share what our life was like before Jesus, and we share the power of Jesus in our life and what he did to radically change us, to make us a new creation, that we're born again, that all things are new. The old has passed away, and now I am a new creation, and I'm totally different. I have joy where I didn't have joy before. I have peace where there was war before, and I have healed relationships. There's forgiveness, and there's a radical new perspective on life. And I start telling these things of all that Jesus has done in my life. And when this man did it, it said that all marveled. And here's a fact about your testimony, is that everybody has a unique and totally different testimony, but there are other people who have faced the exact same challenges that were defeating you in your life until Jesus came along. And they're looking for hope, and they're looking for it in all the wrong places. And what they need to hear is they need to hear the power that Jesus has to heal them first and foremost of their sin, their separation from God, to heal them from some of the consequences of their sin, that there's forgiveness, that there's healing within their marriages, within their relationships, that there's this amazing and new life that Jesus has for them, and that eternity can be theirs, not in hell, but in God's presence where there's fullness of joy. And when people hear a victory story of how God changed your life, it inspires them, it draws them in. They all marvel, and they want to know more about this Jesus. This is the power of our testimony. I want to give you one more example out of John chapter 4. In John chapter 4, Jesus has traveled to this place called Samaria, and he's sitting by a well, and it's this famous encounter that he has with this woman who had had 5 husbands, and she was living with another man right now. In other words, she had had a hard run through life. And Jesus meets her in the middle of the day, and what's significant about this is she didn't come to the well in the early part of the day with all the other women. She was an outcast. Nobody wanted her around. She had a horrible reputation around town, and it had led her to this place of isolation. But Jesus meets her at the well, and he calls her out. He says, look, he says, go get your husband. She says, I don't have a husband. He says, you're right. You had 5 husbands, and the man you're with right now isn't your husband. And she's just totally blown away. And he tells this woman that he is the Christ, the only hope for mankind. And she realizes it. And she realizes that he is holy and she is wretched. And she runs back to the city. And what does she tell them? She says this in verse 29. She goes back to the city and says, come, see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came to him. So what does she do? She has this encounter she has this life before Jesus where she had been with all these different men. She was a total outcast. Nobody wanted to be around her anymore because she'd broken all these different relationships. Then she meets Jesus Christ and begins a relationship with him. And from there, she runs back and tells the whole city. But what does she tell the city? She tells the city, I met a man who told me everything that I have ever done. This is the testimony. She didn't pull any punches. She didn't hide any of her baggage from the past. In fact, she said, look, this was my life before, but Jesus has come. The one who is going to heal us, the one who is going to forgive us, the one who is going to reconcile us to God. He has come. And all the people come out to meet Jesus. And that's not the end of it. It says this in verse 39. It says, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed in Jesus because of the word of the woman who testified. He told me all that I ever did. Why did they believe? Why did they come to faith in Jesus Christ? Why was their life radically changed? Why did they have hope? Why did they have a new did they become a new creation? Because they believed the word of the testimony of the woman when she said, he told me all that I ever did. So here, my friends, is the power of your testimony. Remember, a testimony is what our life was like before Jesus, how we ended up giving our life to Jesus, how he changed our life, and what our life is like now because of Jesus. This is our testimony. And when we tell people this, what happens is it inspires people. It draws people to Jesus. People are marveling. People are amazed. People want to come out and they want to hear what Jesus has to say. And people come to Jesus and they believe in Jesus and their life is radically changed. Now, one last thing I want to point out about a testimony, because every one of us who has given our life to Jesus, we all have a testimony. But one thing I want to point out is a testimony is not just lived. We do have a transformed and changed life, and people see, hey, that person has changed. But a testimony is not just lived, it is proclaimed. Notice both the demoniac, he proclaimed to all of Decapolis what had happened, and the woman at the well went back and proclaimed to her city what Jesus had done. And in Revelation chapter 12, it says that we overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb. That's the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, the word of our testimony, and the fact that we don't love our lives to the end. And this is an important reality, my friends, is that our testimony isn't just for us to hold on to and to remember and to cherish. It is for us to proclaim. And so my challenge to you is, as you take your testimony, whether you write it out, whether you go and say it face to face to somebody and tell somebody of the wonderful things that Jesus has done, or you share it on Facebook or somewhere on social media, I want to challenge you to do that. I want to challenge you to take your testimony and share it on every avenue that you have available to you, and watch as God uses your story and how he changed your life to reach others and bring them to himself. That's what a testimony is. That's why it's powerful, and that's why you should proclaim it.